All righty, it's 2:30. We've got offensive coordinator Drew Cronic with us. Scott Wyckoff, you lead us off.
Hey, Coach, what does it mean to not only you, but your players to have you and Coach Cole and Coach Guillermo back for a spring practice, but after being together for a whole calendar year?
Well, first of all, I'm glad they're letting me hang around, so that's good. I think it's great. I mean, it's there's a lot of familiarity there, having, I mean, the whole staff really back, right, on both sides of the ball. So there's a comfort level there, and we know our players better than obviously we did a year ago, and younger guys we got to get to know a little more, but it's just there's familiarity there. We feel like we know the guys. I think they feel like they know us. There's a trust there. Um, and so I'm really proud of our whole offensive staff and the way we get along and work together. It's a big joy. I love being here, uh, and now that we got a year under our belt and it's become very familiar, I just think it's really positive. So I think we've got to we can get ahead of ourselves, right? We gotta go to work, and we gotta do things the right way, and we gotta be who we are, and we got some pieces to replace. But I have so much fun working here and coaching here. I love the people I work with, the guy I work for, and most of all, these young men we get to work with every day. They're just awesome, and you can see there's a lot of confidence and really proud of the way they conducted their off-season stuff so far. So it's just been really great.
Do you anticipate you're going to be able to get a lot more done in this spring than you're able than last spring?
I think obviously we're starting further ahead, okay, but that there's still a lot of young guys who haven't played, right? So there's a lot of learning. All the plebes have got, guys that have been on the scout team who haven't, heard the terminology as much, right? Haven't done the drills as much. There's still, you got to start from ground zero. It may not be, as ground zero as it was a year ago, but you gotta start at ground zero. Don't get ahead of yourself. Make sure you're developing. We got, a young offensive line, right? And so getting those guys, some I think talented players, but that's where, they got to have time, okay, and they got to do the fundamentals, and so I think we'll see how it goes. I generally, we put an install plan together, but I'm notorious for getting off of that plan, and you kind of got to, move on to the next thing when you're ready. When guys kind of have a grasp of the, the first things. So, we always want to evolve. We want to try to stay one step ahead of the defenses we're going to play against. Change little things, make little tweaks, but we still got to be good at blocking down, right, and running inside zone and not fumbling the ball and taking care of of just the little attention to detail things and our base stuff. Those are things we got to work on.
Do you like the coach's mantra of being very physical, like Coach Newberry likes to be in the spring?
I think so. I think it's important. I mean, we have some young men who we know who they are. Okay. And so we got to get some of those guys to the gate while keeping them sharp, keeping their sword sharp. Okay. We know who they are. Um, then there's some guys who have not been thrown in the fire at all, and we've got to find out who they are. Right. So I think the only way you can do that is to go out there and play football, and get after each other. So I think that's we got to be smart about it, right? And we got to control some of those situations, but I think we got to go knock a stew out of each other, man, and find out who wants to compete and who wants to be physical.
Thanks, Coach.
Mike, James.
Hey, Coach. When we talked at this point last year, you just kind of like taking the offense to school, and you said, "Well, the offense is at a 100 level, and we need to get them to a 400 level." By the end of last year, w- given that scale, where would you say the offense was in your estimation, and at what point would you really say you're starting in the spring?
We covered a lot of ground last fall. Okay. I mean, we covered a lot of ground. We're able to here, I think. We've got smart kids, right? Disciplined kids. They can handle a lot of things. So each year is different. Okay. And each team is different. And you don't know where you're going to end up, because you don't always know on the front end what that team is going to do well, right? So you got to make sure as a coach that you're building you have your base things, but you're building your offense towards what the guys do well. That's where we got to live, right? So I think in the fall we covered a good bit, okay, but in a year's time, from spring practice to summer to the fall, by the time we got to the end of the fall, we did a lot of things offensively, schematically. But we need to here, right? We need to be able to do a lot of things, and it's and you could argue it's three offenses in one. You got the triple option elements, you got the wingtail elements, you got the spread elements, and so we got to be able to do those things. And so when you come into spring, like I said, while we might not be starting at ground zero, because a lot of our guys are familiar with our system and what we call things and how we do things, you still got to reinstall. You got to reinstall your base things and teach them and drill them and make sure you don't get ahead of yourself from a fundamental standpoint. So, yeah, we're further along right now than we were a year ago. But you don't just pick up right where you left off versus Oklahoma. You got to go back and you got to make sure you're spending the time on the fundamentals and then see where this particular offensive group goes. Okay. We know the basic things we're going to do, the non-negotiables, but where is this group going to head, and how do we tweak and do a few things differently so that we're unpredictable and we're different and we stay, try to stay a step ahead of, the defense, and the defenses we're going to face. So, I think that's where, and I'm the world's worst, man. I want to pick up right where I left off, right? And just keep going, right? But that's not realistic. You got to do your base things well, and then you got a lot of plebes who have got to learn those base things. Who've got to start from ground zero. So, like I said, we're further along now, but where this offense will end up exactly, no way to know that until we get really going and seeing what we do well.
Well, and you mentioned that kind of three offenses in one kind of mindset. The offense you inherited obviously was slanted a lot towards one of
Mhm.
those three parts. There it came in as an option team, and especially along the offensive line, it's offensive line play in that kind of scheme is you ask them to do more than I think they were accustomed to, but it gave you a chance to add things to what they were already good at. But as you lose a lot of those guys now, does that kind of force you to evolve in certain ways because those guys won't necessarily have that same base when you have all these new offensive linemen coming up?
I think you make a great point, and I think we've got to establish those. But we're going to have to get under center and run triple. Okay, to be successful here, that's got to be something that people have to defend. Okay, it protects the other pieces of the offense. All right, so we while we may recruit, as we recruit, let's say we want to get a little longer at certain positions, maybe a little bigger, a little this, a little that. At the same time, we still got to be able to line up and run zone dive. Okay, and that be a fundamental staple of what we're doing. And all those guys who are just getting here, it's like you said, they're starting from ground zero, but everybody starts from ground zero at some point in time, right? So I think we've got to continue and Coach Guillermo, especially up front. We ask a lot of those guys. They're having to veer release. They're having to come off with lower pad level. But we're also asking them to run power schemes, gap schemes, inside zone schemes. We're asking them to do six-man protection. We're asking them to run screens. We're asking them to be athletic and reach on the perimeter, right? So those are all things that have to be developed in their toolbox. Okay. Some of the guys have been in the system, right? A handful of those guys have and are going to be a little farther ahead. But looking at us up front right now in the spring, we're with Hoke, bouncing back off of surgery, with Ben Purvis bouncing back off. So those guys are going to be fine, but they're going to miss a lot of spring. There's going to be a lot of new faces up front that have not gotten a ton of reps. Really, Cam's the only guy has any game experience, really true game experience. There's going to be a lot of young tackles out there. So what I got to make sure I don't need to get ahead of myself, right? We've got to be fair to those guys and get the fundamentals established I got Eli Heidenreich. He knows what he's doing in our offense, right? He's got to hone it. He's got to sharpen his sword. But he's got a good feel for what's going on. It's that next Z Snipe, right? Who are the next playmakers? That next wave of, because most of the guys making plays were that guy taking snaps, and then Tesca, okay, Chat, all right, and Eli. Who's the next wave of playmakers, to take some of that burden off of those guys, and then after they graduate, ready to really step into the limelight the next year. So I think this spring is a lot about that. Who is the next wave, okay, of guys that are going to be making plays on Saturdays, who are going to be blocking on Saturdays, who are going to be catching the ball, running the ball. I think that's what this spring will be a lot about, is establishing some of those depth things at the skill positions, and then getting a bunch of young offensive linemen to come along, uh, you know, guys that are, I think, going to be really good, but that we got processes to go through. So um, that's what and while doing all that, how hungry are we going to be? What's going to be our mindset? Or was it a flash in the pan, or are we going to get better, and do things even better than we did a year ago? So some of that is in here, right? Is how are you going to attack what's going on? Our mantra, the last fall, was it's always been no fear of failure. And I get to those were the two things we kind of came in with this spring, having a mindset of appreciation. We get to be here, we get to do things we're doing. Okay. And we're changing that this spring to stay on the hunt. That's kind of what our mantra on offense is: staying on the hunt. We've talked a lot about that. Even Coach Newberry talked about, are we going to continue to hunt? Because you don't eat if you don't hunt, right? And we've got to keep that mindset, being the underdog, having a chip on our shoulder, having something to prove all the time. I think those things are as important as anything. Okay, is can we continue to have a hunter's mentality? And especially for the guys who uh, made a lot of plays last year. Okay, can they continue to have that type of mentality? I think that's as important as anything we're going to do schematically.
So you mentioned the toolbox, especially along the offensive line. Is there a point where you have to guard against not putting too much in that toolbox to guard from eroding those fundamentals? Kind of make sure you're good at what you need to be good at before you start adding some of those other tools in?
100%. Absolutely. And that's also challenging because our defense is very multiple, so we go against a defense daily that is giving you different looks. And so while it may be this play, say it's inside zone, right? It may be against three different looks, right? That you've got to be able to understand and master. And so while we have, our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 install, okay, plan, okay, it may not be 7 straight days, right? It may be, hey, we need to hold off on installing here and work these first 2 installs again, right? And make sure we got to be fair to the players, okay? And it's like you said, we can't just there's two. I like drowning them a little bit and making them have to absorb. At the same time, we got to be fair to them and not break them with it, okay? And not totally drown them. So that's something we have to play by ear with a little bit because, you know, Connor McMahon had played a bunch of games, okay? And Brent Self had played a bunch of football, and Bhutan had played a bunch of football. Even though it wasn't in this system, they had played a bunch of college football, and that means something. And we're not, up front, we don't have a bunch of guys who played in college football games, right? So we got to play it by ear a little bit and be fair to those guys while also forcing the issue and making them get it done.
Thanks, Coach.
Wags.
Well, picking up with the offensive line, you got 3 starters that are going to be graduating. Coach Newberry told us yesterday that the 2 returning starters, Ben Purvis and Hope Smith, will miss most of spring practice. You had your backup tackle at both tackle spots. Caden Hooper's no longer in the program. Who, when you go out there today, who do you envision being working with the ones? I would guess that Cam Nichols and Grayson Crawford, both of whom were listed as backups at the end of the season, will be in that group. But who else are we talking?
I think today that first offensive line, I've got my depth chart here. I was ready to answer this question, Wags. Uh, you know, Polito, I think will be in there at center, to kind of start things off. We probably anticipate Hoke playing a lot of center when he gets back. But I think Polito will be there. Obviously, Cam Nichols played a ton of right guard for us last year, so that'll be where he starts off the first practice. Grayson Crawford was in a backup role at left guard last year. You'll probably see him in the first group today. And then on the outside, it's some plebes. It's guys like Crowley, Heater. Move Hanson Collie over from defense. I really like him, but obviously there's a learning curve there. Fontana at tackle. I mean, you got some guys that you think have a chance, but you got to get them out there and throw them in the fire a little bit and kind of see what happens. So we obviously know we have development to do there and processes to go through. There'll be some growing pains there. I mean, that's the hardest thing in college football is offensive line. I don't care what anybody says. When you're trying to get five guys to play as a five-man unit, and it's easy to go out at wide receiver sometimes, just try to go run by somebody. But when you got to work and step and get all the different slants and the different movements and then pick up pass protection, all those things, that's a lot. Okay, so this is a big spring for some guys, but it also what's really great here is you got room for competition. Okay, I mean you really do. You got some young guys who should be trying to get people talking about them. So those are some names that I think you'll see out there. Obviously, Acevedo was a backup right guard for us last year, so he'll be getting a lot of reps with that second group. Bunker's a guy who's been in the program for a couple years. You'll see him out there some. So I we'll see. Somebody's got to play, right? So somebody's got to step up and get it done. And I think they will. And I like the way they're being coached with Coach Guillermo and Coach Laurendine. But we understand that there's processes with this. Okay. And so those guys have got to learn and they will. I got a lot of confidence watching just watching our off-season program, watching our fourth quarters, our mat drills, and some things. Some guys really uh, showed that they could do some of those things. I think that's really important. Just kind of showing you can be dependable and you can be a hard worker and you can if you need to put some weight on, you put some weight on. If you need to get a little stronger, you get a little stronger. So we'll get out here and the bullets will start flying and we'll see how some people respond to that.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Are you concerned that it will hinder your ability to execute when you go good on good? I mean, you're talking about a guy like Polito going head to head with Landon Robinson, or
Sure, that's going to make him better.
somebody,
Right? It's going to make him better. I think certainly we're all competitive. We want to go out the first day and we want to go score 100 points the first day. That's how I'm wired. But I also know that there's got to be some patience there with it, and there's going to be some processes. I mean, it's in our defense. I'm sure Coach Volker would say the same thing about some of the positions, right? Where every college football program is losing some pieces, right? And then they have to the next guy up, right? The developmental process is who's going to step up and make plays. And so for us right now, it's up front offensively, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity there because there's a couple guys not practicing, like you said. And then who are those next skill guys going to be that the ones we don't know yet, right? The ones you don't really know their names yet. But that's what's fun about doing what I do, man. The scenery never change or the scenery always changes, right? It's a fun job because you get to see the next wave. This is the 25 football team. Okay. The 24 football team, the guys that are back can learn a lot from those experiences, but this is a new team and this team's got to, we have our identities we want to have, but this team's got to go out there and be itself and we got to grow them as coaches. But I like a lot of these guys. I really do. As I look through all these, guys like, hey, we moved Charles Robinson to Z. Let's see what he does out there. Okay. He's going to get reps out there. TK Hodges got better. He's a guy that plays Z. We need that next Z, right? Come on. We look over at A. Well, there's going to be some guys not practicing at A back. That's going to be Chapman. There's going to be Bryant for a couple days. Bryant's like coming off a little groin injury, right? So, well, there's going to be some young guys getting reps with the first team. Is there going to be some ugliness to that at times? Yeah. Okay, there is. But at the same time, those guys are going to get an opportunity to make plays and see how much better they can get. So this is spring practice. That's kind of how it works. Who's the second B back going to be? Well, there's about four candidates right there that all have some ability. Let's see who's gonna grab it and go with it. So I look at all those positions, and then you got at X receiver Nathan Kent's doing his track thing, right? That means that other guys have to lead during spring practice. So I'm looking for Luke Hutchinson to really have a good spring because he has a lot of ability, and now it's his time to do it. Can Josh Guerin come on? Um, you know, lot of guys out there that have the potential to be really good, and they're going to have to get people talking about them by the way they perform this spring. So all over the place, we're either trying to build depth or trying to find the next guys. Who are the playmakers going to be? All right, and we got to create opportunities to for those guys to make plays and have competition, and go out there and compete every day. And that's what's going to be fun about this.
I was going to ask you about the wide receiver position. Do you feel like you need to develop that position a little more? As I look at the stats last year, Nathan Kent had 10 catches for 222 yards. I mean, he averaged 22 yards a catch, but I would imagine you want him touching the ball, catching the ball more than 10 times. And then only other receiver on this list was Hutchinson with 4 catches. Do you feel like you need to develop the receiver position and get more production out of the receiver position, or do you feel like in your offense the slots are who should be catching the ball?
Well, really, what we've done, we would like more production out of the X split end. And I've had 1,000-yard receivers at that position, okay, before. Last year, it just that snipe position maybe was a little more playmaking, but we believe in Nathan Kent now. I mean, he brings some things to the table, and he's going to continue to improve. But we certainly want to get more. I want to throw it out there that split in more. But we've got to show that we can do that. Okay, that's something that you got. Like I said, as you're an offense coordinator and a play caller, you tend to lean towards, hey, who's hot, right? And so I do think looking at that position when I see the Hutchinsons, the Garins, uh, Kendall Evans is a big, fine-looking athlete, right? But he's just not shown it yet, right? This is a good opportunity for him this spring. So there's some ability there. Noah Bull has had a good offseason. So who's going to step up and make some plays? Because I would like to see more production out at that position.
And on the same lines, tight end, I think you're now 3 years into utilizing a tight end. Early on, it was a bunch of guys that were converted defenders like a Thomas Scully.
Right.
But Jake Norris is a guy that was recruited as a tight end. And then I know there were a bunch of freshmen that we haven't really seen yet that I would imagine you're looking for the tight end position to develop this spring.
Yes, absolutely, because that can be a great weapon. And Cody showed that when he was healthy. But he was not healthy most of the season. But boy, he was a really good player when he was. So obviously, getting Cody fully healthy is a priority. Jake Norris has got to take the reins a little bit. Now that Scully's gone, there's a freshman named Theo Elwell who has a lot of upside. Okay, he's a plebe right now, and he's learning, figuring out. But could he help us? He could. He could. If he can come on. Guy named Will Miles has done some good things. Gavin Noe is there. So once again, opportunity. All right, opportunity with Cody. Probably going to miss a good bit of spring. Coming back from another surgery. What does that mean? Well, somebody else is going to have opportunities to make plays. So having a tight end, that's both the tight end and split end position. We'd like to get more production in the passing game. And we'll see how that goes.
Real quick follow-up from that before I hand it off. Coach Newberry said something yesterday about you'd like to get 2 tight ends on the field once in a while. Is that something you've done at other?
Yep, done some of that at other places. It just depends on, what you feel like your personnel, where you feel like you're getting your best 11 on the field is, right? So, but being able to get into some two tight end stuff is valuable. Okay, it really is. So I don't know if we'll be to that point or not. We'll kind of have to see where everybody heads and how we develop. But that's definitely something I've done in the past and something that it can be beneficial.
Got about 10 minutes left, so let's just do two questions this time around. Scott Wyckoff.
Coach, in this day and age of college football, how nice and rewarding is it for you to be able to develop a player and know that maybe as they make the move from their junior year in spring practice to the senior year, that you're going to have them because their goal is to be a starter on your team and not be moving to another team?
Yeah, it's a crazy world in college football right now. So one of the blessings we have here is that we get to build a team. Okay, we get to develop. And I think that's the reason I got into coaching. That's the reason I mean, I grew up around my dad was a high school coach for a long time and that is what we want to do. So I I love being here, and that's one of the reasons. Because it's still special. It's still about building a family, building a team. So having the ability to know that, hey, these guys are going to be here. These guys understand the value of what they're doing, the value of being a midshipman, of the value of graduating from the Naval Academy, to going on into the Navy, going into the Marines. They're just awesome kids, and they work hard and they get better. So knowing, most of the folks in college football these days, how much of their roster is changing? Sometimes 70, 80%. I mean, literally, you don't know who you're going to have. You don't know who's going to walk in your office and say, look, I think I may need a little more money. If I don't get it, I need to go over here. Right. So knowing we have some stability here and that you can develop and get guys better, I think is why we all got into coaching. So that's exciting for us here for sure.
And does that make it even more important to kind of be successful at the imperfect science of recruiting, knowing that the player that you recruit, that you bring in, you're going to have for 4 years?
Sure. There's no quick fixes, right? There's no, you're not going to go find a fifth-year guy at another school and bring him in, right? I think the pros far outweigh the cons on that. And so you need to do a good job recruiting. I feel like, especially this last signing class was outstanding. The guys coming from Naps, I mean, that was an undefeated team at Naps. Excited to get those guys in here. But we need to do a good job evaluating and get the right guys in here and then go to work with them, and get them better. Whether it's with Coach K in the weight room, what we're doing schematically, or just them as just growing up, right? Just helping them grow into men. So I very much enjoy that style of running a football program.
Thanks, Coach.
Mike, James, got 6 minutes.
Coach, this is kind of off topic, but I'm wondering if you had a chance to follow Mercer at all last year.
I did. I did. They had a good year. They really did. I mean, they took the next step. We had made the playoffs and won a playoff game the year before. They won, they were able to win one more game in the fall to win the conference championship, win a playoff game. I know Coach Mike Jacobs. He's a good guy. And honestly, I care about those kids. I mean, we signed all the kids, right? And poured into those guys. So to see those guys take the next step and get a conference championship was very gratifying. Because they've worked hard and you love seeing those guys have that opportunity. So I was able to kind of, and some of the guys, on the staff are guys that were on my staff. So I keep up with those guys, talk to them, and a lot of the support staff there had great relationships with. Uh, when I came here, I wasn't running for Mercer. I had a good situation there with a lot of good people. And so they're important to me, and to see them do that and take the next step was really, really neat.
All right, thanks, Coach.
Wags, final question.
Well, I just wanted to clarify something you said. Did you say that Charles Robinson and TK Hodges are playing wide receiver?
Playing Snipe Z.
Nice.
Playing Snipe Z. Yep.
Okay. Have you moved anyone else to wide receiver? Who are some of the names out there other than Hutchison? And let me see look at my depth chart here.
Well, Josh Guerin played a little bit of snipe for us last year. We've moved him back to to split in full time. Just think he's probably a little more comfortable there and he has some ability. So you're looking at, for the spring, because you don't have Kent, you're looking at Hutchinson, Josh Guerin, Noah Bull, Kendall Evans, Casey Smith, that group of guys. It's, because the way we do this, you generally have the one true split in the game, right? We have the two snipes, the one true split in, the tight end, and obviously the quarterback in our running back. So I feel like there's some talent there and there's some depth there for guys to get, opportunities in the spring. And that's not just where Hutchinson's out. But that's who we're kind of looking at right there.
Well, and on regard to Hutchinson, I mean, he's a guy that I think he was a converted quarterback. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, so he was learning that position. Do you see him as a guy that could make a real big jump during the spring when he's got a chance to get a lot of reps and
I do.
learn?
I do. We like Hutch. And he's a kid who, when I first got here last spring, we were a little thin at quarterback. He was still working some at quarterback, but we put him out at split in a little bit last spring just to watch him do it. And you could see that he can run, right? There's a twitch and a speed with him that he brought to the table. Kid is really athletic. And he got more and more comfortable throughout the fall. Kent and Regis got most of the reps last fall, but Hutch played a little bit. I expect Hutch to not to put a lot of pressure on, but I expect him to play a bigger role this fall. So I think this will be a great time for him to kind of have a little bit of a coming out party this spring because he's capable of doing that. But he's got to improve like everybody. He's still a young guy. But he's a guy who should be getting pretty comfortable with what we're doing. And he has a lot of ability, smart kid, great kid, wants to do it, so I'm excited about seeing what he does.
Is Hutch maybe even a little faster than Nathan Kent? Is that what the GPS has shown? Close.
Uh, I don't know if I need to say that or not. I mean, Nathan Kent can run, and Kent's got that longer stride, right?
Yeah.
He's Hutchinson maybe a little more in the close quarters, has that twitchy kind of burst. But he's still got pretty good top end too. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see him racing 100 meters. I think, Ken, it'd be hard to bet against Ken on some
It
of
would
that.
be, for sure. All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks, Coach.
Yep. Y'all have a good day.